Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and dedicated researchers, I am pleased to introduce another prestigious award, one that celebrates the talent shaping Africa's future in science and technology, the 2025 Cheikh Anta Diop Early to Mid-Career Award. This accolade recognizes and encourages excellence in research, teaching, and community service by early to mid-career academics and researchers at African universities, particularly in the fields of artificial intelligence, as well as computational and statistical sciences. Named in honor of Professor Cheikh Anta Diop, one of Senegal's most influential intellectuals, this award embodies his pioneering spirit. Cheikh Anta Diop was a historian, anthropologist, physicist, politician, and a visionary thinker who championed interdisciplinary research and African cultural heritage. His groundbreaking work challenged Eurocentric narratives about African history, emphasizing the continent's contributions to civilization and advocating for the decolonization of knowledge through the integration of linguistics, anthropology, physics, and history. His efforts have helped empower Pan-African movements and redefined Africa's place in the world. A university in Dakar bears his name, honoring his legacy as a scholar who bridged disciplines and promoted Africa's rightful narrative. The Anta Diop Award celebrates this multidisciplinary approach and visionary leadership. It recognizes individuals who exemplify Diop's legacy, those who demonstrate outstanding research, community engagement, and mentorship that advances African scholarship and innovation in AI and related sciences. Today, we honor those trailblazers who continue to embody his spirit of intellectual curiosity, social impact, and a commitment to Africa's development. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to announce the 2025 recipients of the Cheikh Anta Diop Early to Mid-Career Award. First place goes to Jordan Felician Masakuna for his exemplary community engagement, impactful research, and visionary leadership in advancing African AI, truly embodying the spirit of Cheikh Anta Diop. Jordan is not here today, but his friend will be receiving the award on his behalf. Can you please come up to the stage?
I'd like to call up Avishka to help to give the award.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I am Dominique Leco from Indaba X Congo Brazzaville, and I'm not the winner. So the winner is my friend from GRC who is actually living in Canada, but who could not make it. So I'm here representing Jordan Masakuna, and on his behalf, I'm thanking all the Indaba Deep Learning organization. Thank you so much.
Congratulations once again, Jordan. Runner-up is Stephen James, recognized for his sustained commitment to African AI development through mentorship, impactful research, and strategic vision, fostering inclusive growth across the continent. Stephen is going to tell us a little bit more about his work. Over to him.
All right, hi everyone, thanks for coming. I know it's been a long day and a long week, so I appreciate you being here. So while I just wait for the slides to come up, my name is Steve. I am from Wits University, and so maybe I'll just start by saying that I'm very honored and humbled to be receiving this award. It feels like almost coming full circle. So when I started my PhD back in 2017, that was the first year of the Indaba, which so happened to be hosted at Wits University, and so now it feels, almost 10 years later, kind of closing the circle on that. So I'm very grateful for that. While the slides are coming up, so I am, as I say, based at Wits University. I am part of the Rail Lab there, which is a large research group, and I hope to tell you a bit about what our research does and focuses on in a few minutes. I'm also part of the Mind Institute based at Wits, and that's an interdisciplinary institute that looks at intelligence as a whole, whether it's artificial or natural, and is very interdisciplinary. And so if you're interested in anything like that, feel free to come find me and chat to me about that. Okay, one other thing I can mention while waiting for the slides is that a lot of the work that I want to talk to you about is simply not possible to do by one person, right? Like, good research happens in a collaborative environment. It happens because you interact with really great people and great students and great colleagues, and that's how you do really great, impactful work, right? Like, no one man is an island, and it's simply not possible to do all the cool things by yourself. Okay, so if anything, I would just encourage everyone to reach out, grow your network, build collaborations so that you can do really impactful research wherever you are. Okay, great. So the title of my talk today is about brains and bodies. If we can just go to the next slide. And when we do, you'll see just some of my collaborators and great students, a lot of whom are sitting over here in the audience. So if you recognize any faces, please go up and say hi and chat to them. They all do really cool research, which I'm hoping to show you about in a tiny bit. As well as our students, we also have wide collaboration networks in Europe, America, and so on and so forth. And all of them have contributed to the research that I'm going to show you about today. Okay, so what we focus on in our group is fundamental AI research. That's what I'm interested in, that's what we focus on, and so it's not too much on the applied side. It's really thinking about how do we make progress in artificial intelligence as a science. And so when you're doing fundamental basic research, it's always a good idea to go back to the beginning and think about what are the basic assumptions that your field is making, and are those assumptions valid? And so if you do that for AI, what you find is there's one fundamental assumption of AI, and that is that the brain is a computer, okay? So this is underpins the whole of AI. The brain is a computer, and if we could just get a computer to do what the brain does, then that's what gets us to artificial intelligence. That's what gets us to machines that can think, okay? But if you kind of think about this, and when I look at this diagram or this assumption, it feels incoherent to me. It doesn't actually make sense, to the point where I think a lot of our field is actually completely broken, because we're all relying on this assumption that I think is fundamentally wrong. And if we go to the next slide, I'll show you why I think this is wrong. I think it's wrong because we don't see brains, well, at least I haven't seen brains floating in the wind, or grown on trees, or lying on the ground. Brains are in bodies, right? Like, brains are not only in bodies, brains are for bodies. The purpose of the brain is to generate behavior in a body, okay? And so without talking about the body, that doesn't really make sense, that analogy of a brain as a computer, because there is no evidence, to me at least, that brains are disembodied. Okay, so there's this field called embodied AI, which I think is a mistake. I think actually the embodied AI is just AI, and everything else should be called disembodied AI. That's what I think. So an obvious question to ask is, well, what are bodies? Okay, because you could think, oh, I could come up with a million definitions of a body. So what I want to propose is that, well, the key things that matter is A, that an agent has the ability to interact with the world, thank you, has the ability to interact with the world, to draw information from it, so to perceive its world, and then to act in the world in a way that modifies the world in some way. And so if an agent has those abilities to perceive and to act, then this is what I mean by a body, that there's this tight coupling between the agent and the world, okay? And so if you have a look at this loop on the right-hand side, if any of you have done reinforcement learning, you'll recognize that loop as kind of being a motivating factor for the field of reinforcement learning, okay? So needless to say, our group fundamentally thinks about reinforcement learning because of this loop that we care about. And in addition to that, what I would say is, well, if you're thinking about this and then you take that environment that the agent is acting in as the real world, which we all live and act in, then what an agent is a robot. So again, if I can simplify things, what I'm saying, what I believe rather, is that robotics is not an application. So there was a workshop now, a really great workshop, again run by some great people from our lab on robotics. It's not that robotics is another application. It's that in my mind, robotics is AR. That's what it is. Robots are AR. We should be thinking about that. Okay. So that's one assumption that I would like to claim is wrong. There's a second assumption. So now we're saying, okay, well, we're in the field of reinforcement learning. What assumptions does reinforcement learning make? And so if you look at the Intro to Reinforcement Learning book, you'll see this sentence right at the beginning of the book. And it says something like, we introduce a formal problem of Markov decision processes, and then we attempt to solve them. And so a lot of reinforcement learning is really about solving these Markov decision processes. And we've done a lot of good with that, right? So, for instance, you probably all know about AlphaGo coming out of DeepMind. That was a major breakthrough in AR. That was saying, we have a system that can use reinforcement learning and function approximation and all the rest to play Go. Now, it was a really hard problem that we thought we were like 10 years away, and we got there much quicker than we did. But one of the reasons that we can get there quickly is because what we do is we come in and we define the MDP. So someone very smart sits down, like David Silver, and he says, okay, well, the MDP for playing Go is like the states that you should care about are the position of the pieces on the board, and your actions are like placing a stone on the board, and so now you have to learn how to play the game. And that's really hard, but that's also a bit cheating, right? Like, you've come in and you've told the agent all the relevant information, and it has to solve a hard game, but you've given it that information. And so if you go back and you consider like a robot, right? Like, how do you get a robot to play Go? That's a very different problem, because a robot doesn't have its action space as placing stones. Its action space is move your motors, okay? And its observations are not the positions of the stones. The observations are RGB pixels. And now you're supposed to, or what you should be doing rather, is going from that space that the agent provides, the robot provides, the sensory motor space, to a representation where playing Go becomes feasible and efficient, okay? And so in all the work that I'm going to run through, and I'm going to run through this very fast, and so if you're interested in anything, please come find me, email me, whatever the case. What we focus on is learning representations. So we have one single agent, like a robot. It should learn representations for the task it wants to solve. So if I put the robot in front of a chessboard, it should be able to play chess eventually. If I put it in front of a car, it should be able to drive a car, but it should learn its representations along the way for solving that task. Okay, so it's just some quick run through of the work that we've been doing over the past 5 or 6 years. So this was work at ICML back in 2020, and we showed how we can learn symbolic representations of the world for long-term planning in a way that can transfer between tasks. So we don't have to relearn every time we are faced with a new video game level, for instance. We then extended this in 2022 at iClear, and we looked at like, how can we do a similar kind of thing, but under the assumption that there are objects in the world. So it is a fact that objects exist in the world, and we should learn representations that are, consistent with those objects. And if we do that, we then can transfer between different objects. Okay? We've extended this to robotics because, as I say, robotics is the goal. For things like plan repair in 2023 with collaborators at Cornell. And this was really about saying, well, if you can come up with a representation for planning, what happens when something goes wrong? When something breaks or something about the world changes, can you go back and repair your representation? And so we show how you can do this on a real robot. Okay, more recent work also from Coral in 2023 with collaborators at Brown. We looked at how you can learn these abstractions for doing manipulation and planning on robots. And so typically in robotics, the problem of manipulation and the problem of navigation are treated separately. And so we show how we can kind of unify these two fields and do long-term planning to solve some really hard tasks on physical robots using these representations. Okay. One other kind of form of perceptual abstraction that we've been looking at is, things like variational autoencoders. And so if you're around on Monday when Max Welling was talking about autoencoders and variational autoencoders, it's common knowledge that variational autoencoders learn factored disentangled representations. And so following the theme of my talk so far, what we showed in IJCA in 2023 with some students is actually that's not true at all. Variational autoencoders do not learn disentangled representations whatsoever. But if you start applying inductive biases from the reinforcement learning space, you can actually get really good performance. If you don't do that, you just do terribly. Okay? And then finally, what we showed last year is that even if you have the perfect representation for solving your task, and so this is in a complicated Minecraft task, with lots of blocks and lots of objects, but the task is quite simple. It's to walk from point A to point B. Even if you have the perfect representations, nothing works. All of planning fails. And so there's a lot we still need to do on the planning front in order to make progress. Okay? Finally, on the kind of action front, so now we want to generate high-level actions so that our robots don't have to reason at a very low level. We've been working on things about extracting skill hierarchies from observation, so observing another agent acting, extracting the skills from that, and then building hierarchical trees of these abstractions that you can use for long-term planning going forward. And then if you were in the talk yesterday from Giroux, who was awarded the PhD prize, he spoke a bit about composition. So this is saying, if I already have a bunch of skills, can I combine them to produce new skills? And so in ICML back in 2019, we showed how to do this with entropy regularisation. In 2020, 2022, and more recently 2025, we showed how to do this with Boolean operators. So you can actually apply Boolean operators to your skills to generate new skills that are provably sound and guaranteed to do what you want them to do. Okay? And then more recently, work in 2024 has looked at how we can do this temporally. So not just with Boolean operators, but also including things like the robot should always do this, or never do this, or first do this, and then do this. And so we can do those kinds of things by incorporating finite automata formal languages into the whole RL pipeline. And so if you ever had to sit through a boring formal language lecture in class, they're actually quite useful for a variety of reasons. Okay? So that's kind of a whirlwind tour of all the things we've been doing more recently. If you're interested in any of that, please come chat to me. Here's our website. You can visit it to find out all the information about the work we've been doing. We also have a whole bunch of postdoc positions that are fully funded. And so if you are a PhD student who has just finished and you're looking for a position and you want to do fundamental AI research, please visit the website or come chat to me at some point. Anyways, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to everyone.